Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a Ko-Fi, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, you can wait till we're live, because I'm not fully set up. I've decided to run this show to extend it a little bit longer, hopefully so I can finish sooner. While I'm setting up, I might as well start recording. Means you guys get to hopefully hear a full setup regime. While I set up for the live show, I don't typically actually have it on camera. But what I will do, while I've got myself in this nice comfy position with my decent mic running, is do a bit of a shout out to all of you who support me on Patreon. So with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to Smith Tools and Purchase, Level Playing Perm, Vitali Z, Colton James, BG, Survive the Spin, FE Patriot, Thomas van der Zander, Measured Flat, Chris Wouters, Sea Level Cultist, Mitch Kennedy, Rod, the name's Burley, Twardwazzle, Jason Hornsby, J Mel's 24, Unamento, Iron 26, Endless, Retro Bill, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Hairy Blade, Mobile Mac 777, Rob W, Del West Watson, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Texas Mike, Chow Yun Cat, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. So what have I got to do now? Now I've got to actually turn things on. So come with me if I like while I turn amplifiers on so I can monitor things. Cameras and lights. Kids run around. I'd normally do all of this on pause. But why not? Might as well show you something else I've got recently. I don't know if I've put this on camera yet. This is my dead cat. So it means that I can actually operate this show with a fan running. So what I do on the live streams is typically have two monitors, right? Keep setting the camera up. This is my main monitor, and it's like a 4K, good quality Samsung monitor that I bought a couple of months ago. Very nice indeed it is too. And what I've also got, I'll set up now, as I'll need to do it, as we're going to be doing a Dave McKeegan reaction call today. As one deck got in touch with me and said, hey, have you seen this Dave McKeegan video? The answer is no. But he went on to explain that Dave McKeegan is... Put this at me while I'm doing this over there. Let's just turn the other mic on. Maybe you can hear me, maybe you can't. But yeah, one deck explained that Dave McKeegan's talking about Coriolis effect and trying to make me look silly, was the way he put it. So my response was to ask one deck, does he achieve that? And he laughed and said, hell no. But I've since had one other response from somebody telling me this is worth responding to because Dave McKeegan does a good job of summarising all the arguments. So that's what I'm going to do today. So it does mean I'll need the projector. So that's what's just been going on. Don't know if you heard me talking. If you didn't, that's kind of just the way it goes. But that's the second screen. Now, to have that running, I need that. You can just see it poking out off the top of that shelf, and it means that it gets incredibly hot in here. But I can have the fan running, which means I can at least get some air circulation. I'm in an apartment that doesn't have any air conditioning, and in years gone by, I've lived here quite a while, I have attempted to run an air conditioner in here by having one like sat on the edge of a windowsill with tubes and stuff, and it just never really worked very well. So fans is what I use, and typically they're going to interfere with the sound that you get on the show, so I don't like using fans. But now I've figured out that a dead cat resolves that. Why won't this camera go into the right position? Is it this bit that needs to tilt? I think it is. The dead cat solves the problem of not being able to have fans on, and because the projector never had any fan noise actually waving over the microphone, that didn't really make any difference to how much projector noise you heard, but it does definitely seem to make a difference to how much fan noise there is. So I'm going to put that on now. How interested this is, I don't know. I mean, setting up for my show without sticking the recording on pause, as strictly speaking a true uncut and after show. As in, I haven't paused the recording. You see me actually set up the show. Why not? I mean, there's normally just dead air during these bits. Hopefully I'm not cutting down, I'm not monitoring the audio at this stage. Because I don't normally do this, so I normally just check. See if the lines are all working. I haven't even done that yet, really. Let's just go to voice meter and see everything. Yes, it seems to be all working. If I have been cutting out, I apologise. I haven't tested my gates thoroughly. I'll do that later, once everything's set up correctly. Okay. Over here we've got my projector that's just been turned on. And what I will typically do is introduce a bit of Google Meet, which I keep calling G+. And someone called me on it, they're like, there hasn't been G+ for ages. Now, I'm sure they meant the the kindest of intent when they pointed out that there isn't been a G+, but Meet, G+, who cares? Does it matter if I call it G+? Is that going to offend anybody? Because if it does, it's actually called Meet. Okay, so there's no one in Discord yet, because I haven't actually joined. There we go. Let's get some background images going. Social slides. There we go. We're all set with Discord and G+. Now I can set up Teams, formerly known as Skype. And share the link. Hopefully someone will join me in the not too distant future. Am I early? I'm a little bit early. Just schedule a show. What are we on? Flat Earth Debate 2376. Live. McKeegan, McKeegan, I do believe. Is it A-N? Keegan? I think it is. McKeegan spins. Only because one deck told me that he had suggested that the planes do account for Coriolis. That's as much as the actual information I've got from one deck who has actually watched Dave McKeegan's video. As I say, he suggested that there's an inference. Ground control to Wolfie Clown Show. You have a man observing you from a non-inertial turning reference frame. Please make micro adjustments to the aircraft immediately. We'll see if Dave McKeegan is falling into the unfortunate trap of asserting that there's a actual deflection when it comes to the Coriolis drift at 15 degrees an hour, asserted to prove that Earth is turning. This would be a not actual deflection, an illusion of drift. Chat going. Show up. Now we just need a chat. Hides behind this little air section. So yeah, Coriolis is the observation of a not actual deflection. That's to say, in reality, when you're talking about Coriolis effect, you're talking about you sat on a roundabout watching a ball be tossed over the top of the roundabout. And when you do that, the ball, from your point of view on the roundabout, looks like it's going to curve. But in reality, the ball's going in a straight line. It just looks like it's curving. That's called the Coriolis force. The force that makes the ball look like it's curving. The pseudo force, that means it's a not actual force. The ball isn't actually curving, it's moving in a straight path over the top of a roundabout with you spinning underneath it. So you are on a non-inertial turning reference frame, observing a ball travelling straight in reality, seem to curve from your vantage point. That's Coriolis effect. If you're to suggest that as you observe a plane from a non-inertial turning reference frame, that's if you're describing Coriolis effect, that the plane needs to correct for something. No. The plane's travelling a straight line. It just looks like it's curving if you are turning underneath the plane. That's Coriolis effect. But who knows? I don't know if we actually do get a decent summary of Coriolis effect from McKeegan or not. Who cares? It's not my claim, it's theirs. I despise the subject. I don't know why I've ended up becoming a Coriolis ninja. I have no desire or need to know Coriolis effect. Let's turn this Bayer dynamic mic off. Like running Phantom Path, I can just see the line greyed out dancing, and that normally tells me that there's a line that's closed with someone trying to talk that I need to open on my voice meter desk. As we're doing it, can I show it? TV screen. Yeah, I can. So on here, I've got all of my mute buttons. For everybody saying you're married to your mute button, they mean you run your show with Voice Meter Banana and can mute the lines if you don't want sound coming through them. Yes, that's correct. I can take control of my show and mute sounds that I don't want to hear, including but not limited to lines with other people in them. So this is my line over here. And this line, for the now, while Skype was transitioning to Teams, I've turned this to my second mic, because this is my Bayer dynamic now. Whoops. So this is G+, my main panel. PC line could be a number of different things that connect in audio terms. So basically anything that's left over that's coming through the default line. And then Discord's separated out. These are my output lines. So this is my main monitor. This is headphones. I think the third one just runs spare, or it runs into my hi-fi preamp. I can't remember if I ever wired up the third line. And then a little bit further on, you've got the output lines. There's two of them, which you can see bouncing up and down. One is used to avoid feedback as a separate line to Discord. So it's looped back into Discord. So this is the output line to Discord. This is the output line to OBS. Yeah, feedback now. But down here, this that you're seeing comes from that second line on Voice Meter Banana. So to just call it a mute button, it's kind of oversimplifying what is an incredibly complex series of ins and outs. Now, you might look at this if you're an engineer and go, my analog desk's got more ins and outs. And you're like, yeah, you have. Unfortunately, there's gremlins and such in computers that don't like various different softwares like Teams and or G+ interacting with one another. They don't necessarily play nicely with each other. So I don't need a separate loopback line for G+. It sorts itself out with a little bit of echo cancellation on the software, and it just works. But not Discord. You have to faff with it to get it to work and connect to both me and a separate piece of software with ins and outs working for all of them. So Discord can talk to G+, and G+ can talk to Discord. I can talk to both of them, etc., etc. And I can play a video. Both G+ and Discord can hear the video being played that's outputted to a live audience. I don't know, I'm quite proud. I figured it out many years ago, and I've expanded the show slowly with a reasonably good knowledge of Voice Meter. There you go, that's that. All one runs nice and smooth. I actually shared the link. Nobody's joining me because I've started early. Should we see if we can find Dave McKeegan's video? It was shared by OneDeck, so I'm assuming that it's just going to be here somewhere. Or did he share it with me personally? I'll mutter to myself while I find. See a video. Here we go. Yeah, he did. He shared it with me personally.
It's easy to go from home to holiday home for no sneaky added fees. Go to booking.com, booking.yeah.
Their white top, not so white.
Yeah. unskippable ads. At least there was audio playing while I was figuring out why I wasn't hearing anything. Just, I wouldn't have preferred there to be an advert right in the middle of my stream, but it's unskippable, so I mean, what do you want, YouTube? At least it's playing today.
Well, and thanks for joining us for another video.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome, Dave. It's good to be here. I'll do it early for my mods when this goes out as a uncut and after show. So, hopefully, one of my mods will pick up on the fact that I'm suggesting the audience goes and lets Dave McKeegan know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a link to his video. And it gives me an opportunity to line up my chat a bit nicer. Do that first. I've done all of this before I started any recordings. I'm actually recording this, aren't I? Yeah. Yes, this boring tripe did get 16 minutes of airtime. Wonderful, Nathan. Well done. Job's a good one. Funny stuff. Okay. Right, is anybody in meet? They might have tried to get in and I've just not had my audio running because my preamp was off. So let's open up meet so anybody can join without me having to let them in. And I think that is genuinely the last thing I need to do. Move this chat a little bit, make it pretty. There we go. Now I'll get my super chats. So yeah, for the mods, I have actually put a link to Dave's video in my live stream. Now this obviously is completely irrelevant to this when it goes out as a premiering stream, but if you would be so kind, I don't know, can you hear that lawnmower? No, the gate seems to be engaging, which tells me that it probably isn't getting through, but there's a bloody lawnmower. Ain't no dead cat gonna sort that out, I'm telling you now. Okay. Oh, it's going to distract the hell out of me hearing that weed whacker out the window. Should I close this window? Let's just carry on.
You'll often see flat earthers making various claims about flat earth, though they don't always actually agree with each other about these claims. For example, some people will point to this being the flat earth map, whilst others will say it's not, or they can't.
Okay, I mean, it's not, though. It's an azimuthal equidistant North Pole-centric globe projection. So how people debate this subject is kind of what I'm, at the moment, highlighting is the game, or the name of the game is to make it seem like there's a debate when there isn't one. So some people would say that this is their flat Earth map. Some people wouldn't. Okay, what is it then? Well, it's an azimuthal equidistant North Pole-centric globe projection. That's what it actually is. Now, that's not contestable, that's what it is.
Can't agree on why things move towards the ground when you...
Sorry, have you ever looked at a cloud, Dave? Wow, Dave's a spastic. Hello, Dave. Let's do this live for Dave. Can you see... Oh, no, it won't focus on it. Oh, it's not going to make my point very effective. There's clouds, Dave. Why all things move to the ground? Cloud. Dave was dropped on his head. He's as dumb as Simon Dan. Doesn't appreciate that not all things go down. We've got frickin' clouds. Oh my God, you're a retard. What is your malfunction? Have you never seen a cloud, Dave McKeegan? Were you dropped on your head? I just want to know. I'm asking for a friend. Did your careless parents, like Dan's careless parents, drop you on your head because you're under the misapprehension that clouds don't exist, Dave? Now, I'm just going to call you a spacker and correct you, dumbass. There's clouds. Not all things go to the ground. Yeah? Gas go down, go boom, boom, go splash, splash much, Dave? Crackhead. Pay attention. There's clouds. Okay, Dave. You stupid idiot. This is irritating. Why do I have to educate this man who's got a much bigger audience when in his opener he's suggesting that we're trying to fathom out why all things go to the ground? When there's clouds, Dave! I mean, what kind of a crackhead idiot are you? I'm asking for a friend. Answers on a postcard.
Drop them. But one claim that most flat earthers seem to agree on is
that stereotyping fallacies are used by our opponents quite regularly. Most will agree on. Will most agree that you're a crackhead when you say that things go to the ground, Dave? Will most agree that you don't know what a cloud is? Because I'm going to go, yeah. Everyone will agree with me when I say you're a spastic because we've got clouds. Now, nobody's going to disagree with me when I say they're not going down. Do you not understand the water cycle? It was taught to you in high school. So the rain come down, the vapour go up. Yeah? Up! So when you say, what, we've got a force of gravity? No, we haven't for 110 years. Yeah, spastics like Dave haven't been keeping up with their continuing credits when it comes to gravity. Yeah, we haven't got a force of down. You want to hear George Mooser? He told your spastic buddy Craig about it. Yeah? You haven't got a force of gravity. You can think of it being a force, but I would call you a spastic. Like, you can think of all things going down. When we got freaking clouds, I just say no, dum-dum. Bent pseudo-Riemannian fourth geometry. That's what you've got. Fourth being the extra dimension invented by an Einsteinian convention he plucked out of thin air. Now, that has been on the table, superseding gas go down, go boom, boom, which it does not, with a force of gravity, 110 years ago. Spastic! Go and learn about what gravity actually is. In your dumbass rhetoric of a ball, you've got a bent pseudo fourth dimension, not force of down. Look at a cloud, crackhead.
Is the claim that they push about the Earth being measured flat. And one of the most...
Sorry, did he just say that one thing that all flat earthers would agree with is that Earth is measured flat? No. Let's get that dispensed with immediately. So what I will do from this point forth is I will cite Simon Dan as my source that says Earth is measured flat. Because according to Dan, it's all good to measure Earth flat, surveyed flat, locally flat. Simon Dan says this, not me. So, from this point forth, we'll hear what Simon Dan's got to say on the subject, and we'll see if these two numpties are agreeing with each other or disagreeing with each other. We'll find out as the day progresses whether Simon Dan's in the hard place of denying Earth measurements. They're all flat, by the way. We'll hear Dan admit to that in a moment. Or whether or not McKeegan is in the awful position of being on his knees on the rock of Earth being measured flat, admitted here by Dan. Let's have a little listen.
Curved sea level.
On your knees, acknowledging the linear distance, perpendicular elevation, and flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle.
Yeah, okay. On a local scale, I will acknowledge all of that.
Dave, did you hear that? Quote, on a local scale, I agree with all of that. That would be the linear, flat distance measurement, the perpendicular elevation, and flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle. Agreed to as measurements made of Earth on a local scale, so saith Simon Dan. That was unedited. That is to say, taken directly from Simon Dan's video, me saying, get on your knees and acknowledge the flat Earth and how it's measured, and Dan saying, yeah, I acknowledge all of those things. And that's because he can't deny them. What are you going to do? Deny the base of a triangle is flat when you're measuring Earth with it? Absolutely, unequivocally not. You will concede the flat Earth triangle, because without it, you haven't got any measurements. Now, let's see if Dave McKeegan takes this awful truth of needing to measure Earth flat to a disposal of having any measurements. Let's see what Dave's got to say in the face of Simon Dan.
Most vocal proponents of this claim is Nathan Oakley.
No, Simon Dan. See, what I did was took Simon Dan's words, because he was quite content to tell his audience, quote, what Nathan is saying. Oh, well, that's no worries, Dan. I can take your words and say what I'm saying with your words. No worries. Like when Dan admits that we do measure Earth flat locally for convenience. Not my words. Dan's words about measuring Earth flat locally For convenience, end quote, Simon Dan talking about measuring Earth flat locally for convenience sake. So we'll be clear about the flat Earth trig that Simon Dan's claiming is okay to use, even though you believe it's a ball. You will measure it flat with trig because that's okay, says Simon Dan when admitting Earth is measured flat. So who agrees with this? Everyone, including but not limited to Simon Dan, and he'll be telling you exactly how flat it's okay to accept Earth is measured with trig locally over 50k.
Measure Earth flat. And yes, local land surveys use flat approximation for convenience.
So Dave, we all clear? We use local approximations for convenience. Yeah, they do measure, the surveys do measure Earth. But we can call them approximations of a flat Earth used for convenience. Meanwhile, those are facts that I will stand by and cite Dan for. When detailing what surveyors do with trig, it's flat for convenience. The calculations, the measurements of Earth are flat, and that is admitted by everyone, not just flat surveyors, in this instance being detailed by Simon Dan. What else you got to say, Dan?
Elevations are measured from the flat Earth headquarters.
I don't know about that. No, elevations aren't measured from flat Earth headquarters. No, Dan, no. They're measured from the surface level, sea level. I mean, Dan also admits to that momentarily.
Okay, look, land surveyors do often use flat plane approximations over short distances.
So surveyors measure Earth flat. Okay, I agree with you, Dan. Yeah, surveyors measure Earth flat. So we're clear, as we progress, it'll be a Dan versus Keegan when Dan is saying we measure flat locally, short distances. But we're definitely measuring Earth. They're surveyors. And it's definitely flat. We're using trig. It's the shortest distance on a straight line. Right, Dan? Or maybe we should hear from him personally.
6,000 feet above sea level means the average level of the ocean. And
so we're clear that Dan's saying these words. Yeah? I'm playing little unedited sections of Dan admitting Earth is measured flat. Just so we're absolutely abundantly clear in response to Keegan that he's responding to Dan telling his audience that surveys say flat.
And sea level is assumed to be flat.
Well, it wouldn't be much use if it wasn't.
Flat ground forever. Since elevations are measured as vertical distances from sea level.
Yes, since they're measured vertically from sea level, that means you need a horizontal plane of reference to measure them. Yeah, that's right. So, again, so it's clear for Dave McKeegan. Dan's admitting that to measure heights, you need a surface level. Yeah, Dan's admitting to measuring Earth flat here, Keegan. So we're clear. This isn't me saying it, it's Dan.
Measuring a mountain's elevation, it assumes that since elevations are measured as vertical distances from sea level.
Yeah, they are. That's exactly how they're measured.
And sea level is assumed to be flat.
It can't be anything other than flat, or it wouldn't give you a level reference to give you perpendicular for the higher the mountain off. So it's not necessarily right for Dan the idiot to call it an assumption. It's an axiomatic fact if you want to call this a measurement. But nevertheless...
Then the whole system collapses if Earth is curved.
Yeah, that's right, Dan. If you've got a curve, you haven't got an axiomatic perpendicular to the height of the mountain. So no, you can't have a curve involved in an angle measurement. Like this. If this line's curved, it's not an angle anymore, is it, Dan? So you're going to need a flat Earth for this, right? And Dan understands that, Keegan. You understand, right, Keegan? That Dan understands that you need a flat baseline. You see, a few years back you were making videos saying, well, Nathan says Earth's flat because of triangles. And what do you know? Here we are a few years later, Dan says triangles too. He just says, yeah, it's okay to use triangles, straight line distances, perpendiculars, because the whole system falls apart if it's curved, and he's absolutely correct. So, to summarise, Dan's saying surveyors measure Earth flat locally over short distances, and that's good. Okay? So Earth is measured flat. says Simon Dan, and he cites surveyors doing it on short distances that he calls local. What are they doing on the short distances Dan calls local? Oh, they're measuring Earth flat. So we're all abundantly clear. Who agrees with me in this scenario?
The Earth has curved sea level.
No, Dan, that's sort of retard speak that a man dropped on his head would come out with. A contradiction in terms, you might say. You can't have curved sea level. That's kind of spastic talk, really. Again, I don't know if I've got a response out of Dan. Were you dropped on your head by your careless mother? Because curved sea level is a contradiction in terms only a spastic would come out with.
Okay, look, land surveyors do often use flat plane approximations every major bridge or tunnel.
They do. They use flat plane approximations. So we're clear. The surveyors, people measuring Earth, use a flat plane when measuring Earth, says Simon Dan. Yeah, that's right, Dan. I edited out your mitigation where you went on to say that doesn't mean it's curved. That meaningless drivel wasn't cited. But what you are apologising for, that would be the flat Earth. Very short local distances that we measure Earth when surveying are flat. But according to Dan, that's okay, right? You ballers can understand from Simon Dan that it's okay to measure Earth flat over very short distances, right? That's cool, says Dan. So Keegan's clear. Dan says it's okay, McKeegan. Over short local distances, we're okay to measure Earth flat because the surveyors do, for convenience, measure Earth flat. Okay, we all clear?
Or transcontinental railway. Use flat approximation for convenience. Linear measurements require flatness. Miles only make sense on a flat plane. By using miles, directions and measurements, you're secretly a flat earther.
Somebody I've not actually covered on this channel for a while, but I have had quite a few of his followers commenting across numerous videos pushing these same claims that Nathan makes about the Earth being measured flat.
What about Dan? Do you want to add Simon Dan to the list? See, Dan says it's okay to accept that you do measure flat Earth locally over small distances. So you do measure Earth flat, Keegan. I'll give you a different example. You in Antarctica, with your elevation angles. This is the base of the angle that you measured. It's the surface level. Unless you want to deny that you're measuring Earth in Antarctica, Dave. I've got it defined as the hard place. If you want to deny that your elevation angle measurement of Earth isn't a measurement of Earth, then you can take your measurement of Earth that you made in Antarctica and fuck it off out the window as not being a measurement of Earth. Alternatively, Dave, you measure Earth flat with your elevation angle measurement of the sun for a 24-hour period. Am I to accept your 24 hours of flat Earth elevation angle measurements? Or do we just decry them and say you, not me, you don't have any measurements of Earth? Again, I'll just clarify where that would put you. That would put you in the hard place, Dave. You don't have any measurements. Your elevation angle measurements in Antarctica aren't Earth measurements. Well, then you don't have any measurements of Earth, Dave. Oh, you do? You forgot your flat Earth prerequisite that Dan admitted to, elevation angle measurements. You've got those that you measured on a flat Earth, Dave. You measure flat Earth. Dan understands that surveyors on a local level measure a flat Earth, Dave.
And yes, local land surveys use flat approximation for convenience.
We all clear, Dave? For convenience, you, Dave, you measure Earth flat for convenience, for the angles you measured in Antarctica. Yeah? Surveyors measure Earth flat. Locally, like on short distances, when they make things on the flat surface of the Earth that they measure flat, says Simon Dan. So we're all abundantly clear what's happening. Earth gets measured flat by everyone always, and there are no exceptions. Dave measures Earth flat. The surveyors measure Earth locally flat over short distances. And Dave here thinks there's some sort of rebuttal. How are you going to refute the surveyors, Dave? You're going to tell me they don't measure Earth flat? Because they do. That's what Dan's admitting to. You tell me that you didn't measure Earth flat with your angles. Okay, then they weren't measurements, Dave. So you didn't measure anything in Antarctica then? Oh, you did. You measured Earth flat with angles to the sun for 24 hours. Yeah, I know, Dave. I already figured this out a while back. You measure Earth flat. Everyone measures Earth flat, Dave. You don't have to like it.
Especially for locations many, many, many miles apart, use flat approximation for convenience. Even manual levelling over long distances.
In fact, it seems to be the only claim that Nathan really makes anymore.
Sorry, Simon Dan makes it. Are we getting this clear up? Can we all let Keegan know? You seem to be responding to Dan. Nathan cleared it up immediately on his stream. That you are mistaken. You thought it was just him making this claim. He played a video of Dan talking about differential levelling over long distances. Yeah? I mean, Dan didn't go into rise over run. But surveying says measured flat locally over short distances. Yeah, okay. Dan says it's measured flat. Locally over short distances. Okay? It's still measured flat. For convenience, though. So it's not just me saying it. You say it. Yeah? Sometimes I hear things like, yeah, we measure Earth flat, but that's only because it's so big that we measure Earth flat. So no, it's definitely not me saying it, Dave. And it's definitely not me doing it. I'm not measuring Earth at all, in fact. If I was to have to be pushed into cite someone who measured Earth flat, I'd cite you, Dave. I'd say TFE, a Mr. Dave McKeegan, and the measurement was in the form of elevation angle measurements of Earth's surface. What's that? You spoke to Dave and he said they weren't measurements of Earth. That wasn't measurements of Earth. No, I didn't take any angles to the sun. And, okay, so Dave's denying his own Earth measurements. Is this what's going on? Okay, I'll still cite TFE and the flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements made of the sun with respect to the horizontal plane of reference that was used to measure it. That would be the surface. Earth's surface. And it must be flat or it's not an angle. I hope we're all clear about Dave being used as my hostile witness for measuring Earth flat personally. Dave did. That's measure Earth flat with elevation angles. He can either get to his knees and accept and understand that he measured Earth flat with his measurement of elevation angles, or he can deny his own measurements, in which case he has no measurements. I'll still use his measurements of a flat Earth to show how Earth is measured flat by Dave. I'll still use TFE. Falsely called an experiment. We'll just call it the flat Earth, because that's what they measured there. Elevation angle specifically. Dave, this dude, specifically, he's my citation. Anybody wants to know where does Earth get measured flat? Hear him, this man. In regards to them going down, there's a picture of how you measure an elevation angle. This is an example of Al-Biruni's measurement, or some shit. I can't remember, it might be Aristophanes actually, but nevertheless, it's a flat baseline for an angle. The same thing that Dave McKeegan was doing in Antarctica. Yeah, he's got it on his shirt, and the only measurements that are going to be provided are elevation angle measurements with respect to a planar surface. And measuring a flat Earth for us. Yeah, you're going to need a flat Earth for that. So I suggest you get on your knees and acknowledge just how flat Earth must be for these miles that you're utilising. They still measured Earth flat, though, even if it was to tellies that wasn't the real sun. You measured Earth flat there! Distance and path and motion are all mathematically derived from a flat Earth measurement. We're not going to be putting anything through any curve calculations until we acknowledge how flat it must be.
Is that a video?
Yes. Just putting up various different cues for me to reference. So we've got an elevation angle measurement to the sun. That's what Dave McKeegan's actually doing. This is the same thing. Elevation angle measurement to the sun. This is what's being measured in Antarctica by Dave McKeegan. To get this measurement, you can't use flat Earth heights above sea level to say that Earth isn't flat. You'll need a flat Earth for it, you stupid clown.
So much so that even when he's presented with an observation that anyone can see causes a problem for flat Earth.
Right, no, there is no problems being caused for any flat Earth, right? When I cite Earth being measured flat, there's nothing to move on from that. You either accept that you, McKeegan, measured Earth flat, or you don't. This is your measurement. It's on screen now. It's called an elevation angle. This is what Dave McKeegan measured in Antarctica. Elevation angles to the sun for a 24-hour period. Now he can say, oh, no, I didn't measure anything. I didn't measure any angles, actually. Actually, I wasn't getting elevation angles. All right, so you didn't get any measurements then. So you've got no measurements of Earth. Okay. Well, I'll reference the measurements of Earth. Here's an expanded view of what elevation angle measurements for a 24-hour period to the sun would look like. This is what they measured in Antarctica. This is what they alleged was an experiment. It's not. It's flat Earth elevation angle measurements to the sun for a 24-hour period. That's what they actually measured. So like I say, I will reference Dave and point out what gets measured.
For example, he was reviewing somebody's video recently where they put on screen a series of images of a building that were taken from further and further distances away. All of the images of the building were scaled so that the building appeared the same size in every single one, but you can see as the camera gets further and further away, more and more of the bottom of the building gets obstructed.
And? So how does that alter Simon Dan explaining that we survey Earth flat? Let's just hear Simon Dan again, because this sounds like a glaring straw man. No, I didn't make any claims about this. I mean, when I speak specifically about Dave McKeegan, specifically about you, Dave, so we're clear what my claim is with respect to what Dave has done. It's on screen now. This is what Dave McKeegan measured in Antarctica. This is what's on his shirt. This is what I have addressed. His flat Earth elevation angle measurements to the sun for a 24-hour period. This is what Dave measured. So, no, you want to straw man me with something about how much obstruction due to the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking, Earth curve mathematics suggestion of obstruction based on an observer's height measured off a flat surface level in the maths that Dave would need to appeal to make this straw man claim. Now, Dave, you see, to make the assertion that something's blocking the bottom of the building, you'd need to put that distance into the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator. And that would be dependent on the observer's measured height off surface level, because the derivation in the mathematics in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth curve mathematics requires parallel eye level when measuring your height off a flat Earth. So no, Dave, I'd have definitely addressed this, but that little straw man attempting to be burnt in your crappy little video here is being addressed directly, so that we can move back onto the actual point I'd address to Dave. You are my hostile witness, Dave. You measured Earth flat with elevation angle measurements to the sun for a 24-hour period. Obviously, this is defined as me bashing your knees in and getting you on your knees to acknowledge the flat Earth prerequisite for an elevation angle measurement which you made in Antarctica. Alternative options include denying you've made any measurements, calling them calculations or extrapolations. You can do that, but then I'll just point out that you don't have any measurements of Earth. And I'll still rely on TFE's flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements. Or Simon Dan's admission that surveyors measure Earth flat.
Normal trigonometry gives good approximations. Trigonometry doesn't care what shape you're on. It's just relationships between angles and lengths. Used by pilots and astronomers and GPS systems, you can absolutely apply trigonometry. In the case of this diagram here, 50 kilometres, so normal trigonometry is absolutely valid.
So normal trigonometry, we all understand that trigonometry only works on flat surfaces. We're talking about straight line linear distances and straight lines for angles. That's what we're talking about when we talk about trig being okay to use when measuring Earth. Like approximating it, weasel, over a short distance, weasel, when measuring Earth flat, locally, weasel. Yeah, we're measuring Earth flat. The surveyors are measuring Earth flat. That's how it's measured. Earth, that is. Flat, that is. Earth being measured. Flat, that is. An admission by Dan. It'll get played every time I hear some strawman shit about measuring heights off surface level in begging the question, proof of nothing perspective, hijacking Earth curve calculations that also require surface level be flat. For this garbage claim to come from this man.
Something that you fully expect with a globe. I've demonstrated this before using a curved surface, and you can see it every single day just watching objects going over the crest of a hill. So, what was Nathan's explanation for what causes this bottom-up obstruction?
Sorry, I haven't made a claim about it. It's a claim being made by the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, and upon said claim being made, I take people to the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator and point out first and foremost it's in orthographic view and displays the side of your own head alongside the target object. Whereas Dave, who is either idiotic, that's to say he was dropped on his head by his parents, or ignorant, has shown as an example a demonstration that did not have an orthographic view utilised in the demonstration. The view was a perspective view. So Dave is obviously too ignorant to understand how his own mathematics works because he's using perspective views, unlike his appeal to the obstruction at the geometric horizon, marked with an X and labelled horizon.
You can see it
in the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculations that are a orthographic representation of the lying shyster's suggestion that the target is the only thing we see when he represents the view thusly. Where's the target's side of his own head in this view, Dave? Do you not understand how the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculations work when they represent you in a side profile orthographic view with a surface level measurement requirement? Because I'm going to suggest that Dave's just a spastic. Like he's just thick. Like he's been in this subject long enough to understand how Earth curve maths, but yet he's misrepresenting how Earth curve works by showing perspective views for an orthographic representation. Now I'm just going to say he's a spastic, he's thick as shit. Meanwhile, this little straw man of how I should explain how your claims of Earth curve in orthographic representations work. Now, this little straw man's not going to fly. Meanwhile, if you're going to make this argument, you're going to need to explain why you need a surface level as part of the measurement to make this claim. And as soon as you do, get on your knees and acknowledge the surface level measurement with parallel eye level for the calculations in your begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, you'll be on your knees acknowledging how flat Earth gets measured for your surface level. We won't be debating how much gets blocked in the distance at the geometric horizon that resides below the surface level you just measured. And I'll point out that your perspective view is a bullshitter's way of lying about the orthographic mathematics of Earth curve that infer that if you measure Earth flat for your height off surface level and retain a flat surface level for a parallel eye level, you can, in orthographic mathematics, lie about a further second horizon below the surface level you measured. That's what you can do. And then you can throw this shit up that doesn't show the side of your own head like Earth curve maths needs in its orthographic representation, where you see the side of the frickin' world. Well, that's not how this is being represented by lying shitbags like Dave. He's just a liar. You're watching this man, you're being deceived by him, and you don't even know it.
Every single day just watching objects going over the crest of a hill.
Well, that's not going over the Earth curve geometric mark with an X and labelled horizon, begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve that you are appealing to when you suggest that we see Earth curve in the distance that's blocking a building. This is an actual hill, and the mathematics of Earth curve requires you measure surface level. So what are you going to do? Just ignore the facts in this matter that you require surface level measurements? You require Earth to be measured flat to appeal to these maths.
So, what was Nathan's explanation for what causes this bottom-up obstruction on a flat Earth?
Effect that we see in this image.
You've got distances! What do you think this is? 25 kilometres, right? 34 kilometres. They're linear! Flat! You don't have curved distances in kilometres, you stupid girl. Don't use our measurements. How dare you assert that the distance in flat linear kilometres is going to debunk the distance in flat linear kilometres? Why do these stupid little children, this idiot, ignorant girl, make videos about how a flat Earth linear distance in kilometres to a building measured with a height off surface level proves Earth isn't flat? It's utterly stupid!
Yes, his attempted explanation of the observation was to not actually attempt to explain the observation at all.
Sorry, I pointed out that the distance in flat linear miles would require flat linear miles be the distance measurement that you appeal to, at which point Earth's measured flat with flat linear miles. So, yeah, I did explain exactly what was being measured in miles. In this case, distance. Maybe it's just my rebuttal wasn't heard. Maybe the second time I say it a bit louder, you might hear. Maybe make a measurement distance on Google Maps and tell me it isn't straight and linear. Maybe you could tell me that the distance measurement as you do an elevation profile on Google Earth isn't also straight and linear, as per the measurements of Earth. Like the scales on a map are flat, straight, linear representations of a scale in miles. So I absolutely addressed the prerequisite requirement for flat Earth in terms of your distance appeal. Mute before transition.
And instead just say that heights require a flat Earth, therefore the Earth must be flat, and so...
So that would be what Dan's pointed out. Your height is prerequisite in terms of your distance measurement. It's a linear flat distance, and if you're going to have an elevation angle give you an angle, it's going to be a flat Earth that you're utilising for it. So no, Dan's already conceded to all of these things, Dave. Were you unaware? Like heights above sea level require you have a flat sea level? No, mate, you don't seem to be keeping up to date with the flat Earth debate. Maybe it's just going to be a string of straw mans that don't actually represent what's being talked about here currently.
So everything else is irrelevant. So, in this video, I'll be going over the various measurements that Nathan claims requires the Earth to be flat, such as elevation angles, heights, and distances, and showing how he's wrong and how anyone can see day to day that those measurements don't actually require flat surfaces. In reality...
Well, this is what we're talking about. This is an elevation angle measurement to the sun. So before we do anything else, if it's being suggested that elevation angle measurements aren't a flat Earth prerequisite, I'm going to read out a few citations. The elevation angle, sometimes referred to as solar elevation angle, describes how high the sun appears in the sky. Like on screen now. Pause it. The angle is measured between an imaginary line between the observer and the sun and the horizontal plane the observer is standing on, sustainable by design altitude angle. The altitude angle, used interchangeably with altitude angle, is an angular height of the sun in the sky measured from the horizontal. PVE education. Measurement of elevation angle. Elevation angle is the angle between the horizontal plane and the line of sight measured in the vertical plane. That's radar tutorial. Solar zenith angle is the angle between the sun's rays and the vertical direction. It is closely related to the solar altitude angle, which is the angle between the sun's rays and a horizontal plane. Since these two angles are complementary, the cosine of either one of them equals the sine of the other. Angle of elevation. The angle of elevation is the angle between the horizontal line and the line of sight which is above the horizontal line. It is formed when an observer looks upwards. Suppose you are standing at the terrace of a building and looking upwards at the sky or at the sun or moon. The angle thus formed between your height from the ground level and the line of sight formed is called the angle of elevation. Formulas, definitions, and examples. Angle of elevation. Angle of elevation, definition. The angle of elevation is an angle that is formed between the horizontal line and the line of sight. If the line of sight is upwards from the horizontal line, then the angle formed is an elevation angle. I've got about another half a dozen more, but I'm going to stop there. There you go. I've
I
defined
don't hear any of them say curved.
Let's see what Dave's got to say about the matter.
Much of this is pretty straightforward geometry, a lot of which you could learn on the likes of Brilliant.org, because amongst their hundreds of on the using Brilliant app, you can consecutive, and doing these different measurements, such as angles, heights, or distances, can only be done with a flat Earth, and so therefore the Earth must be flat, because
No, therefore Earth is being measured flat. So if we are measuring heights off surface level or sea level, then you're measuring heights off surface level or sea level. Okay? So we've got a surface level. So we've got a sea level. This isn't contestable. It's not like I'm saying, if we measure off surface level, then ipso facto we've got a surface level to measure. I don't need to make that stupid, nonsensical, redundant statement. We've got surface level. We've got sea level. We use it for measuring stuff. When we use it for measuring stuff, we can use triangles with flat bases, like the flat surface, like the flat sea level, like the flat surface level. Trig is good, like Dan says, like Simon Dan says, because that is how we measure. Again, not contestable. I'm not drawing a conclusion from it. I'm stating a fact. Earth is measured flat. We use surface level for elevations. That's what elevation is. Height off the surface level. Again, there's no conclusion to be made. It's a statement of absolute fact.
because apparently it's measured flat. But why does Nathan believe that the Earth is measured flat?
Because it is. Like when you measure the height off surface level, you're measuring your height off surface level. That's not a belief. So do I believe you and your elevation angle measurements with respect to a flat Earth surface level? Can I trust Dave's Earth measurements? Now, in this case, I've just defined them 6 ways from Sunday. They're elevation angle measurements. Like with respect to the horizontal plane the observer is standing on, for this to be an angle, for this to be a measurement, and for it to be relevant to Earth as a measurement, I need to know, can I trust Dave's Earth measurements of elevation angles? Can I trust them as Earth measurements, Dave? Because if no, then you haven't got any measurements of Earth. If yes, Earth's measured flat, because it's elevation angle measurements that you measured and I will rely upon. So this isn't contestable. Either Dave kicks his own measurements, that's the TFE flat Earth measurements Dave made of Earth, that's flat Earth angles, or he kicks that shit to the curb and says, I haven't got any measurements of Earth, in which case he hasn't got any measurements of Earth. But I'm going to rely on those measurements. Dave measurements. This dude's measurements. I'm going to rely on them. See on his shirt? That's him being in Antarctica, right? I'm appealing to your measurements, Dave. Are yours not right? Why do I believe in your measurements? I don't know. You can tell me the answer, Dave. I'm intrigued. Do I believe you measured Earth flat? Or am I imagining it? Did I hallucinate you measuring flat Earth prerequisite elevation angles in Antarctica? Tell me that you didn't measure Earth and you haven't got any measurements, or that they're just calculations, in which case you haven't got any measurements, or they're just estimations, in which case you haven't got any measurements. Alternatively, Dave, I'll rely on your reliable measurements of a flat Earth in the form of the elevation angle measurements you made for a 24-hour period when you were alleged to be in Antarctica. Allegedly, you measured the Earth flat with elevation angle measurements to the sun for a 24 hours period, and I'm relying on them. Unless they're just beliefs. I mean, maybe you can tell me. Are my beliefs in your measurement beliefs, Dave? Because I'm a bit confused. I'm relying on you and your measurements of a flat Earth.
And I suspect if Nathan ever does a reaction to this video, he will have just slammed the pause button down, probably for about the 10th time already.
Yeah, Dave, I did. I slammed the pause button down and pointed out that I'm appealing to your measurements and asking for a friend if they're my belief in your measurements of a flat Earth. That's what I did. Let's see if Dave guesses right what I'll do when I slam the pause button on for the 10th time.
In response to me saying it's a belief, and he will have just yelled something along the lines of, it's not a belief, it's a fact.
Not quite, Dave. What I actually said was, I rely on your measurement. So I'm asking, in response, is your measurement a belief I hold? Because I'm relying on it, yeah? I just need to know, can I rely on your measurements? Or are they my belief in a flat Earth? Prerequisite elevation angle measurement. Maybe we could find out from Dan if it's reasonable to accept these measurements as measurement. Let's have a little listen to what Dan's got to say on the matter.
Earth being measured flat. And yes, local land surveys use flat approximation for the angular size of Pikes Peak from that position is 2.36 degrees. This is basically the angular size you expect on a flat Earth.
Here.
You absolutely do calculate these degrees when talking about how high a mountain appears from a certain location. We measure Earth flat. That's how line of sight works. Elevation angle is often measured by calculating it using height and distance.
I'm pretty sure we've just cleared up what an elevation angle is. So, Dave, you measured elevation angles. Height, distance. That's how they're calculated, right? We just heard from Dan the man. So, like I say, Dan's cool with us using elevation angle measurements, and you measured elevation angle measurements to the sun for a 24-hour period that you alleged to spend in the Antarctic region to observe the sun and measure Earth flat with elevation angle measurements that I rely on that you made. So we're going to get it cleared away. You are going to respond and let my and your audience know whether or not my measurements, no, they're not. They're yours. Your elevation angle measurements, are they a belief? Did I just put my trust in the wrong thing? Do we need to shove your measurements where the sun don't shine, or are they reliable flat Earth elevation angle measurements that you measured of a flat Earth? Which one? Are we relinquishing them? I've got this defined as a position, by the way. It's called the hard place. I haven't got any measurements if they're going to be flat only. If they're angles off the surface, then no, I haven't got any measurements. It's just calculations. In which case you haven't got any measurements of Earth. Yeah, and then in which case I was wrong to believe in Dave McKeegan measuring anything. What a crackhead. Obviously, this spastic having been dropped on his head wasn't capable of making any Earth measurements when he went to Antarctica at great expense. Oh, they were measurements? Oh, I'll rely on them. What's that, they're my belief? No, they're your measurements of a flat Earth, Dave. I hope we got this clear. I've paused the video for the 10th time to make it abundantly clear that I didn't express any belief in anything. I expressed my abject and total faith in your measurements. Unless they're not measurements, in which case we'll chuck Dave and his TFE experiment, measurement, whatever you want to call them, we'll chuck that shit out, because he weren't measuring Earth. Right, Dave? I just believed in the wrong thing when I thought incorrectly that Dave had an Earth measurement in Antarctica. David didn't have any Earth measurements in Antarctica. It was just my belief. Unless they were flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements, in which case we definitely measure Earth flat. Like Dan has started to warm to. Dan started to understand. 50 kilometres of it, no less. Locally measured flat is Earth, according to Dan. Short 50 kilometre distances are measured flat. Elevation angles are measured flat. And Dan understands it. Yeah, I understand it. I'm relying on Dave's measurements of a flat Earth, but Dave thinks that I've got a belief in his measurements. So we need to get this squared away quick sharp, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? Maybe we can ask Dave. Does Dave even realise that I'm using his measurements and I'm relying on them? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe you can let him know.
For example, he says all elevation angles require a flat Earth.
Any evidence you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline? When describing how high the sun is in Antarctica for a 24-hour period with elevation angles as the description mathematically of the measurement taken, you will unequivocally require Earth be measured as a flat plane of reference to acquire an elevation angle to the sun.
So the basis for this claim seems to be that he thinks you can't derive an angle from a curved surface and that therefore you can only get angles to flat surfaces. Thus, Earth must apparently be flat in order to get an angle to a star. There are a few problems with this angle
to the sun.
So the basis for this claim seems to be that he thinks you can't derive an angle from a curved surface.
Sorry, did I say derive? My ears did not mistake me. Dave, you're a lying shit. Measure. Talking about measuring angles from the surface. Derive? No. You can derive angles from tangents to balls that you imagineer. But we're measuring Earth's surface. So we're going to be talking about how we measure Earth. Not how you derive a tangent from a ball that you imagine. I thought you were measuring Earth. We'll need to get this squared away as we move forward, but I need to find out whether or not Dave's denying that he's got a measurement, because he seems to be implying at this point that what he's got as a measurement that I'm relying on isn't a measurement, it's just a derivation. A derivation's not a good Earth measurement. I mean, I'm going to rely on people who actually measure Earth with elevation angle measurements. They call them elevation angle measurements because they're measurements. Dave seems to be turning this flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurement into a derivation. That sounds kind of like the hard place. Yeah? Did you predict that I'd, mute the stream for the 15th time to say that Dave's got a position that seems to be very much like what I define as the hard place? They've stopped meaning measurements, it seems. Derivations? Haven't you got any Earth measurements? Have you only got derivations? Like calculations? I want Earth measurements, though. I mean, if we're going to argue about what Earth is, I, a flat earther, will rely on Earth being measured flat and surveyed flat, like Dan admits to. Like on a local scale, 50 kilometres of measuring Earth and how flat it must be for convenience to measure flat. That's what I'll rely on. But Dave here seems to say that he doesn't have any measurements in Antarctica, only the derivations. That seems a bit crap. What gives?
Surface, and that therefore you can only get angles to flat surfaces, thus Earth...
Not get angles to, we're getting measurements from, aren't we? We're measuring from the surface if we're measuring Earth. It seems like Dave's definitely taken the hard place. Yeah, you're going to relinquish your measurements, Dave, in favour of tangent-based calculations.
Earth must apparently be flat in order to get an angle to a star.
Yes, that's correct. Let me just reread one of the definitions of an elevation angle for Dave's indulgence. The altitude angle, sometimes referred to as solar elevation angle, describes how high the sun appears in the sky. The angle is measured between an imaginary line between the observer and the sun and the horizontal plane the observer is standing on. So that's how we measure Earth and how an elevation angle measurement gets defined. But it seems like Dave doesn't want his measurements to be measurements anymore. He'd prefer that we're getting tangents from balls. I see.